Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Tabitha Akol. Let's begin. Tonight, the worsening security crisis across Ambazonia's counties continues to manifest in the most brutal and heartbreaking ways, from extrajudicial killings by mobs to the rising wave of kidnappings that have turned communities into hunting grounds for criminal syndicates. As the colonial regime in Yaoundé tightens its grips through militarization and systemic neglect, ordinary Ambazonians are left vulnerable, unprotected, and forgotten. Spotlighting the troubling incident of a young woman who was abducted in Bamenda, the administrative heartbeat of the Midland Zone. Her case is not isolated. It is but one of many in a string of kidnappings now plaguing the region, turning human life into a bargaining chip for extortion and fear. Now, this trend sheds light on the bitter truth. La Republique du Cameroon has failed to prove safety or justice for Ambazonians. What now thrives in this vacuum is a cruel economy of survival, where predators roam free, families live in dread, and justice is replaced by silence, a ransom, or revenge. For a homeland where justice, dignity, and protection are not privileges but rights secured and upheld by Ambazonians and for Ambazonians. With this, we take the prime headlines on tonight's Undaunted. Mob justice claims another life in Bamenda amid escalating lawlessness, while kidnapping has become a thriving business in Bamenda amidst the war. Ambazonian State Army joins task force in Donga Matung Neutralizes colonial enemy brigade. Still in Donga Matung, Ambazonian State Army captures Mbororo collaborators. As abduction epidemic grows, a young woman is rescued from kidnappers in Bamenda. Neglected and forgotten, Menchum County's ring road still a distant dream despite decades of promises. Now insecurity in Bambili. La Republique du Cameroon accused of complicity amidst rising insecurity in Ambazonia. Now on the temporary protection status, Ambazonian lobbyists applaud Dr. Sako's efforts as U.S. legislation gains momentum. And on the African scene, Kambila's party defies ban, resumes operations amid tensions in Congo. And in the rest of the news across the globe, tensions soar as India and Pakistan exchange drone and missile strikes. And Pope Leo XIV elected as 267th pontiff of the Catholic Church. With this, we take the full briefing. Here is a worsening security issue in Bamenda. A young man was killed by an enraged mob after allegedly attempting to steal a motorbike at St. Blaise Junction. This case of extrajudicial punishment reflects the alarming rise in mob justice across Ambazonia, where the absence of effective law enforcement has left communities to take justice into their own hands. Now, the disturbing trend calls attention to the broader implications of a failed state structure imposed by the occupying regime, which continues to deny Ambazonians their rights to justice, dignity, and security. Now, we see a young man met a brutal end in the early hours of Tuesday in Bamenda, the capital of the northern zone of Ambazonia, after he was allegedly caught attempting to steal a motorbike. The incident occurred at St. Blaise Junction, a known hotspot located between T Junction and the Ayaba Hotel. According to eyewitnesses, the young man, whose identity remains unknown at the time of filing this report, allegedly brandished a firearm to seize a motorcycle from its rider. However, he was quickly overpowered by a group of civilians who descended on him with sticks and stones, ultimately beating him to death before any formal authority could intervene. Now, Undaunted correspondents who arrived shortly after the scene reported a heavy sense of fear and frustration among residents. These incidents add to the rising tide of lawlessness, insecurity, and mob injustice in Bamenda, where public confidence in the so-called law enforcement in La Republique du Cameroon has eroded entirely. In the absence of a functioning judicial system, civilians increasingly resort to vigilante actions, which, while born of desperation, often end in bloodshed. St. Blaise Junction, the site of the lynching, has become symbolic of Bamenda's decline, once a thriving city, now haunted by fear, poverty, and unchecked violence. With ongoing military raids, arbitrary arrests, and daily harassment from La Republique du Cameroon, locals find themselves in a perpetual state of survival, often leaving room for due process or civic order. Now, these latest tragedies serve as a sobering reminder of the urgent need for self-determination, regional governance, and the restoration of justice. Also tonight, we take a look at a case in Bamenda, still in Bamenda, as the war of the liberation of Ambazonia rages on. The city of Bamenda continues to grapple with lawlessness and insecurity, with kidnapping emerging as a booming and dangerous trade. In the latest incident, a young woman abducted last Sunday evening was miraculously rescued in Mulang by a Good Samaritan. Now, this alarming trend, fueled by the breakdown of governance and security under French Cameroon, has made citizens vulnerable to predatory criminals and armed gangs exploiting the chaos for profit. The lack of institutional protection and effective response from the occupying regime only deepens the crisis. Now, this case involves a young woman who went missing on Sunday evening after visiting her aunt in the outskirts of the city. The victim's disappearance sparked concern, and her photos were circulated across social media platforms in a desperate attempt to trace her whereabouts. In a twist of events, on Wednesday, May 7th, she was spotted in Mulang by a Good Samaritan who recognized her from the social media post. According to eyewitnesses, the lady was found lying down, visibly weak and unable to speak. She was quickly taken home and rushed to a local hospital where she remains under medical observation. This incident adds to the growing list of kidnapping cases in Bamenda, the heart of Midland zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Just earlier this month, 3 individuals were intercepted by armed assailants while returning from a family gathering. They were held hostage for 2 days, only released after paying a ransom. Their and personal belongings were also seized. Kidnapping has now become a new line of business in Bamenda. As the Ambazonian liberation war continues and the city remains under siege from La Republique du Cameroon, the people are caught in a crossfire, vulnerable and without recourse. Ransom payments have become a routine, and most families avoid going to the press for fear of retaliation. Now, our Undaunted analysts over the times have noted that this surge in abductions is symptomatic of a collapsed system, one where the French government continues to exploit and abandon the people of Ambazonia. With no functional police response or credible judicial process, communities have been left to fend for themselves in an environment where fear and impunity reign. Now, here's a woman who has been kidnapped. Graciously, she was rescued. This latest rescue offers a rare moment of relief in an otherwise dark and uncertain reality. It also reinforces the call for our liberation and establishment. Now, moving on to another report tonight in Donga Matung. A joint operation between the Ambazonian State Army, Donga and Bui unit warriors has resulted in the elimination of an entire enemy military brigade consisting of 5 soldiers. The attack launched last night saw 4 enemies killed on the spot, while the brigade commander escaped with a scattered leg but succumbed to his injuries. Now, what are the casualties in the aftermath? The 4 soldiers were killed in the initial attack, and the brigade commander's body was retrieved by his colleagues the next day. Was a loss on the Ambazonian side. Unfortunately, a soldier from Buyi Unity Warriors was caught by a bullet, captured alive, and subjected to brutal and inhumane treatment before being killed. A disturbing image shows the body of the fallen fighter with signs of torture. Let's see this video.
Yes, today is the 8th of May 2025. This is the great harvest that the Buyi warriors and the Donga Matung warriors have harvested today. Buyi is the land of no return, and if La Republic terrorists decide to be stubborn in Buyi, we will be going into the neighboring areas, collecting weapons from there one after the other. This is the great harvest. Yes, today is the 8th of May 2025. This is the great harvest that the Buyi warriors and the Donga Matung warriors have harvested today. Buyi is the land of no return, and if La Republic terrorists decide to be stubborn in Buyi, we will be going into the neighboring areas and collecting weapons from there one after the other. This is the great harvest.
Yet, the Ambazonian struggle continues. The Joint Task Force's success demonstrates the determination of Ambazonian forces to protect their land. The conflict in the region remains intense, with both sides engaging in fierce battles. The Ambazonian fighters have vowed to continue their struggle until their goals are achieved. Well, moving on still on a report from Mbororo. In another development, the Ambazonian State Army in Donga Matung caught 2 Mbororos who had been working very closely with the La Republic du Cameroon military. They have been responsible for the killing of civilians in Bay, Sa'a, Benka, Tamru villages, and many others. They have been on the radar of our Ambazonian State Army for so long. After interrogations, they reviewed many of their actions and many proofs atrocious actions in Donga Matung as a whole, including in the NWA local government area, where they confessed killing civilians and resettling their Mbororos and Fulani brothers from neighboring Nigeria. A lot of intelligence has been gathered from them, but for security reasons, they are classified for further actions. A picture below shows one of the men with an AK in one of their killing missions. After realizing that they have given out too much information, and also because they weren't chained or handcuffed, they tried to overpower one of the Ambazonian State Army who was taking care of them, and the other Ambazonian State Army on guard had to fire in self-defense, and they unfortunately died without completing interrogation. Meanwhile, after a so-called peace caravan staged by CPDM leadership in Donga Matung in their fake Damofu, the Mbororos have been killing the Wimbo people non-stop. Recently, in Ntumbwa village, Mbororos walked into people's homes, took out a boy called Mbem and executed him, went to Ngabo and killed another man called Malam. Then they went to a third and the man had escaped. They took away all the gold and told the wife that they would be coming for the man. Now, the people of Donga Matung can't be subjugated by the Mbororos who begged land to grave their cows. We haven't heard any condemnation since the killings of civilians in Ntaba village, Umbungong. As long as Mbororos have vowed to fight a fight which wasn't theirs, we will flush them out of Ambazonia. Now, in Ring Road, despite promises made in 1985 by the colonial regime of Paul Biya to construct the Ring Road, the people of Menchum County in Ambazonia are still yet to witness any tangible progress. The road leading from Bamenda to Wom, the county's capital, remains treacherous and largely impassable by conventional vehicles. These starkly contrast with the infrastructure development observed in regions of La Republic du Cameroon. Motorcycles have become the only visible means of transport in Wom, highlighting the regime's persistent neglect. The continued support of some individuals for dictator Paul Biya raises questions about complicity and the betrayal of the people's struggle for equity and development. Now, the womb section of Ring Road remains a long-standing symbol of unfulfilled promises and deliberate neglect by French Cameroon in Yaoundé. Since 1985, when dictator Paul Biya pledged to personally supervise the construction of this critical infrastructure, the people of Mencham have seen no meaningful action. 4 decades later, conditions have deteriorated, and Womb is now worse off than it was before the promise. While regions under La République du Cameroon benefit from regular infrastructure investment, Ambazonians, particularly Mencham County, remain trapped in abandonment. The absence of basic road infrastructure in Wom is a painful reminder of the systemic marginalization suffered by Ambazonians under La République du Cameroon. With the Bamenda-Wom road in deplorable condition, motorcycles have become the only viable option for travel. These bikes brave treacherous terrain where vehicles cannot pass, offering a semblance of mobility to the people. Now, more disturbing is the emergence of individuals driven by selfish interests who campaign for yet another mandate for Paul Biya, a man who after 4 decades has failed to construct even a single road in Mencham. These actions betrays the aspirations of a people long deprived of justice, development, and dignity. Also tonight, La République du Cameroon Army has been accused of inaction and complicity in the face of growing violent attacks, causing fear and displacement. This accusation is part of the content of an open letter addressed to Colonial Governor Adolphe La Afrique by an anonymous inhabitant of Bambili. Now, the once peaceful town of Bambili in Bamenda, capital city of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, a key academic hub, is facing a rapidly deteriorating security situation with a surge in violent attacks causing widespread fear and displacement. A recent open letter to the colonial governor of Bamenda, Adolphe La Afrique, paints a grim picture of a community under siege, with residents feeling abandoned and betrayed by colonial security forces. Now, the letter, written by a concerned youth of Tuba local government, details a series of recent violent incidents. On April 27, 2025, a teacher was killed. On May 1st, 2025, the branch manager of Mughamo Travel Agency was killed near a colonial gendarmerie unit where no intervention took place. Also, on May 3rd, 2025, the faun of Bambili's palace was attacked, resulting in another death. On the same day, the mayor of Tuba survived an attack at his hospital. Hotel and the general manager of UNVDA was attacked at his residence with a civilian casualty. Now, the letter emphasizes that these are not isolated incidents, but a pattern of escalating violence that has destabilized Bambili, home to over 34,000 students from the University of Bamenda. The situation has led to parents withdrawing their children from schools, students living in fear, and the local economy crumbling. A key point of contention in the letter is the alleged inaction and complicity of colonial security forces. The Bambili Colonial Gendarmerie Unit is accused of prioritizing extortion over protection, while the colonial Japan forces stationed at the University of Bamenda are criticized for their passivity during the recent attacks on key officials. All this raise the worry responsible for the attacks. The letter concludes with a passionate appeal stressing the humanitarian nature of the crisis and the potential consequences for the entire zone. If Bambili, the academic heart of the Midland Zone, is lost. Well, still on tonight, Ambazonia lobbyists applaud Dr. Sako's effort as U.S. legislation gains momentum. In a significant development which has unfolded in the Ambazonian struggle, as Representative Adrano S. Pilat has introduced legislation regarding Cameroon and Temporary Protected Status, TPS, in the United States House of Representatives. This move comes after outreach efforts by Mr. A and an Ambazonian lobbyist who worked closely with the Congressman's office on the resolution. Now, the resolution HRES 378 has garnered support from several members of the House who have co-sponsored the bill. This growing support is seen as a positive step towards advancing the resolution in the House. Mr. A has reached out to Senator Bokar to introduce companion legislation in the United States Senate. The lobbyist will provide updates on the progress of this effort. Now, the lobbyist has urged Dr. Sako's network in the United States to encourage their representatives to co-sponsor HRES 378. Sharing the resolution on social media channels is also encouraged to raise awareness and build support. Also, the Ambazonian lobbyist has applauded Dr. Sako's effort and has expressed gratitude to Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako, president of the interim government of Ambazonia, for his team's efforts in advancing the Ambazonian cause. According to Mr. A, their collective work led to Representative Adriano Espaliet introducing legislation regarding Cameroons and temporary protected status. Now, this development is seen as a crucial step in the ongoing effort to bring attention to the Amazonian cause and potentially impact the lives of those affected by the conflict in Cameroon. And right now, moving on to the African scene. An African scene tonight in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Political friction has intensified as the People's Party for Reconstruction and Democracy, led by former President Joseph Kabila, has resumed activities despite a government-imposed suspension still in place. Last month, the Interior Ministry announced the suspension of the PPRD, citing concerns over what it described as Kabila's overt political involvement and his failure to denounce the M23 rebel group. The government has linked the former president, who has lived in self-imposed exile since 2023, to instability in the eastern provinces, where M23 maintains control over significant territory. The PPRD, however, has moved forward with its political agenda, asserting that the suspension has lapsed by law, according to the party's legal interpretation. Such administrative sanctions automatically expire after 15 days unless upheld by a court, and no judicial ruling has been issued in this case. Adding to the political intrigue, Kabila quietly returned to the country in April through neighboring Rwanda and entered the rebel-held city of Goma. His arrival unannounced and without any public appearances since has prompted renewed speculation over his role in Congo's political future. While the government continues to argue that national security concerns justify the ban, legal experts and civil society observers have expressed concern over the executive branch's use of administrative power without judicial oversight. Now, the situation highlights ongoing tensions between Kabila's camp and the current government, potentially setting the stage for deeper political confrontations ahead of the 2026 elections. Also tonight on the African scene, as Europe commemorates the 80th anniversary of its victory over fascism and the end of World War II, Algeria observes a far more sober occasion, the colonial-era massacres of May 8, 1945. While the continent celebrates liberation, Algerians remember a day of bloodshed that marked a pivotal moment in their long struggle for independence. Commemorative ceremonies were held this week in the cities of Goma, Kerata, and Setiv, the epicenters of the massacres. Now, citizens gathered to honor the victims and reflect on the legacy of colonial violence. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, in a national message, described the date as both a source of national pride and the beginning of Algeria's fight for liberation after 132 years of French colonial rule. Also, Algeria's Ministry of War Veterans has launched a series of memorial events under the theme, "A people without memory is a people without a future." During the World War II, over half military infantry soldiers from North Africa, West Africa, and Madagascar served in the French army, many including over 100,000 Algerians who believed their service would lead to greater freedoms. Some volunteered, others were conscripted. However, when the war ended, hopes of reform were crushed, as General Charles de Gaulle lauded the triumph of liberty in radio broadcasts across France and its colonies. Algerians demanding those same liberties were met with brutal repression. Also, on May 8, 1945, peaceful demonstrations erupted in towns like Ain Timochent, Goma, Kertrata, and Setiv. Protesters waved flags and revived calls for independence. The French police opened fire, sparking violent riots that killed more than 100 Europeans. Now, the French response was swift and devastating. Airstrikes, naval bombardment, and artillery assaults followed, targeting entire communities. According to Algerian authorities, up to 45,000 Algerians were killed. French estimates place the number closer to 3,000. Although Algeria and France agreed in 2022 to form a joint historical commission to examine colonial-era events, the initiative has stalled due to ongoing diplomatic tensions, particularly over immigration and France's balancing act between Algeria and rival Morocco. Historian Daho Djibal, who was abducted and conducted extensive interviews with survivors of the May 8 atrocities, described the massacre as a foundational moment in Algeria's fight for sovereignty. France has never acknowledged that they committed a mass murder, he said. Whether we call it a war crime or a crime against humanity, there was no declared war, yet the Air Force, Navy, and artillery were deployed to suppress a demonstration. While French President Emmanuel Macron has advocated for historical truth and mutual recognition, successive French governments have stopped short of issuing the formal apology Algeria seeks. In a gesture of diplomatic engagement, a delegation of about 30 French lawmakers have centrist and left-wing parties traveled to Algiers on Wednesday to take part in the commemorations, a symbolic step, but one that falls short of full reconciliation. Well, with this, we pick news across the globe. Tensions between India and Pakistan escalated on Thursday as both sides accused each other of carrying out drone and missile attacks, raising fears of a deeper conflict between the nuclear-armed neighbors. Pakistan's defense minister warned that retaliation was increasingly certain as cross-border strikes entered their second day. According to Pakistan's military, 25 Indian drones were intercepted and brought down across several areas including Karachi, Lahore, and Rawalpindi. The Pakistani army reported that one drone struck a military installation near Lahore, injuring 4 personnel. Also, India, however, claimed it had neutralized several Pakistani drone and missile attacks targeting military locations in northern and western regions. The Indian Defense Ministry stated that in response, Indian forces carried out precision strikes on Pakistani air defense systems and radar stations. The military exchanges follow a strike by India on what is called terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan, which it said was in retaliation for a deadly attack in Indian-administered Kashmir on April 22nd. Pakistan denied involvement in the Kashmir incident and rejected claims that militant camps were targeted. It also said it downed 5 Indian aircraft on Wednesday, an assertion India dismissed as false. Also speaking to Reuters, Pakistan's defense minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif said the country was under immense pressure to respond. Retaliation is increasingly becoming certain now. I will still refrain from saying it is 100%, but the situation has become very difficult, he said. Now, the ongoing tension between India and Pakistan is not new. Since gaining independence in 1947, the two nations have fought 3 wars, 2 over Kashmir, and have had repeated confrontations. Both countries became nuclear powers in the 1990s, raising global concern. Each time, their disputes flare up. Also, world powers, including the United States, Russia, and China, have urged both sides to exercise restraint. The United States consulate in Lahore advised staff to remain indoors due to the deteriorating security situation. The conflict is also impacting the economy. Pakistan's stock market halted trading after the benchmark index dropped by 6.3%. The country's international bonds also took a hit. Indian markets saw similar turbulence, with the Nifty 50 index falling 0.58% in its most volatile session in a month. On the ground, fear spreading. Reports of panic buying emerged in the Indian state of Punjab, which borders Pakistan in India's border areas. Blackout drills were carried out on Wednesday night in anticipation of further strikes. Now, both sides report civilian casualties. Pakistan said at least 31 of its civilians were killed, with about 50 wounded. India reported 13 civilian deaths and 59 injuries. Also, the Indian Defense Ministry added that 16 people, including 5 children and 3 women, were killed in intensified firing across the line of control in Kashmir. Indian ministers told lawmakers on Thursday that their airstrikes had killed over 100 militants in Pakistan, although the final count was still being compiled. In contrast, Pakistan's information minister claimed that 40 to 50 Indian soldiers had been killed and military installations destroyed. figures that could not be independently confirmed by Reuters. Despite the rising tension, both governments signal that communication channels remain open. Meanwhile, Pakistan Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar confirmed that national security advisors from both countries were in touch and that the military hotline was active, although he offered no further details. Also, Indian Foreign Minister Subramanian Jaishankar emphasized that India does not seek to escalate the situation. However, he warned that if there are military attacks on India, there would be no doubt that it will be met with a very firm response. As the region braces for what could come next, the international community watches closely, hoping that dialogue will prevail over further escalation. Well, with this, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight, but let's get a recap of our major headlines. And with that, we've come to the end of Undaunted, bringing into the news and those stories. But before we go, let's have a recap of our major headlines. In tonight's Undaunted, we saw mob justice claiming another life in Bamenda amid escalating lawlessness, while kidnapping becomes a thriving business in Bamenda amidst the war. We also saw Ambazonian State Army Joint Task Force in Donga Matung Neutralizes colonial enemy Brigade, and the Ambazonian State Army capturing Mbororo collaborators still in Donga Matung. Amid abduction epidemic, a young woman was rescued from kidnappers in Bamenda. Although Matung County's ring road still remains a distant dream, despite decades of promises. Insecurity in Bambili. La Republic du Cameroon accused of complicity amidst rising insecurity in Ambazonia. On the temporary protection status, Ambazonian lobbyists applaud Dr. Sako's efforts as the United States legislation gains momentum. And on the African scene, Kambila's party defies ban resumes operations amid tensions in Congo. And the rest of the news across the globe, tensions soar as India and Pakistan exchange drone and missile strike. And that is all Undaunted tonight, bringing into the news on those stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted newsroom, we say thank you for joining. We leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.